Hi again, everybody. Mark Stein with the OutMarket.Pro podcast, coming to you weekly, usually. We've got a return guest, Don Odom, who is a business coach, and he's got a new name, new branding for his business called Springboard Business Coaching. Welcome back, Don. Glad to have you.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Mark. Thank you for having me back. Always enjoy chatting with you.
So, you coach small business owners, probably also medium-sized business owners.
Yep.
And correct me, do you deal with some high-level, multi-billion-dollar corporate execs as well?
Well, I don't know about the billion dollar, but I do deal with corporate execs. So basically, for the last 10 plus years, I've been working with solopreneurs. Men and women who have a business that basically is running off their shoulders and wanting to expand it, take it to the next level. I work with a ton of business owners in that 5 employee up to 20 employee range, who are basically have proven their model in terms of a revenue standpoint, but have a lot of struggles in building out the business to support that. Again, making that transition from the business, basically working from the sweat of their brow to making the company work from being team focused, process focused, and procedure focused. And then executives, with their leadership, as well as their team with maybe skills, sales skills, leadership skills, if they have, managers under them. Kind of the full array has been what I've focused on. And at the end of the day, my philosophy is for business owners, and it kind of works the same for executives, because I see them as a business within a business, is to really create an organization that basically takes care of them, one that will transform that job from a job that owns them till a company and organization takes care of them, that has built-in redundancy, repeatability, and most of all, the ability to have some freedom. And that's where a big sticking point is for a lot of business owners. They get into things they really enjoy and they love. They have a real aptitude, a capability, and it's something they want to do with their life. And then they realize to do that, there's all this peripheral things that have to be built within the business to support that. And unfortunately, that often leads to them really not being able to spend as much time doing the thing they got into business to do, as they're trying to handle all the other things. So it's almost a catch-22, but it's very necessary. So I help business owners out of that situation, out of that business trap, I call it.
And let's dig into that.
Okay.
It sounds pretty common, and I deal with a lot of solopreneurs, and people just get as busy as they can be, and more so start giving up their weekends, giving up soccer games of their kids, and just are not available. So talk a little bit about what you're seeing out there. Maybe talk a little bit about how the COVID era has affected that, if at all, and what you advise in those situations.
So let me start with the COVID. I think that there is a hangover effect that I see, and that is still trying to come out of that malaise. And I think that malaise is kind of in 2 areas: business malaise as well as personal, right? And so especially, not to make this into a health show, but if you had long COVID symptoms and that sort of thing, there's a lot of brain fog there. Your energy is not as high as it used to be, but the demands of your business don't relent. And so it's a really tough situation for people to get out of that and deal with that. And then, the business side, and obviously business was, for a lot of small business, came to pretty much a standstill. So almost rebuilding, relaunching, and getting that momentum back has been kind of a double-edged sword. In the beginning, there was a lot of demand, and it's like, great, I've got cash flow coming in, but then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm overworked, can't keep up, especially if I got some of the COVID long symptoms. So it's like kind of this double-edged sword. But anyway, that's part of it. But what I see more than anything that's pervasive is really, and this is the psychology for, I don't know that we mentioned it, but I'm also credentialed in transactional analysis psychology. And so this is the psychology of business ownership. And your style meaning your personality and how you have learned how to survive in the world, Mark. It works for us individually, all right, because we're all made it from little people to big people, right? But those things that kept us from, dying and enabled us to survive from our kid ages up to our adult ages, sometimes those are the actual things that stand in our way in our business. And what happens is if we don't understand that, we don't see that clearly. And so a style thing for most business owners is that they are responsible and they are workaholics. And so they do what is natural, which is if the things that I'm doing are not working for me, I got to do more of them. And so that leads to, hey, I got to give up some things so I can provide for the people I love. But the problem with that is that you get a lot of your energy, you get a lot of your creativity, you get a lot of just who you are sucked out of you because you're trying to do all these things to drive the business. And that can be damaging to relationships. And so the very people that you're trying to work really hard for and provide for, create new opportunities, new lifestyles, begins to become distant. Because now you're working so hard and you're so focused on the grind that there's just not a lot of time for the rest of life.
Or energy.
Right? You're worn out. And this shows up, it shows up in the hours that the business owners work. A lot of times it'll show up physically. You'll start seeing that people are overweight because they stress eat. They don't have the opportunity to go and exercise because there's no time. And so their business pays a toll, their relationships pay a toll, and their body pays a toll. And so by and large, helping people understand what their styles are and how those show up, and then what the blind spots are of those styles has been very, very helpful for a lot of my clients, because what they are able to do is let themselves off the hook and not feel guilty if they're not working all the time, realizing that there's other parts of life that are just as important. And you kind of have to stair step things up if you're going to be successful in the end and still have all the people, the relationships, and the things in your life, health as well, intact so that you can really enjoy it. But a lot of times we don't have that perspective. And what I do for people is really help them kind of take an inventory and take a step back. And what's amazing from that is it's really almost this counterintuitive thing that happens. I kind of call it magic, right? And it doesn't make sense, but when you step back, what often happens is the results go up. And the reason for that, even though I say it's counterintuitive, I've studied this. The reason for that is that we then have more time where we're at high impact or high effectiveness. And and this shows up for everybody. And the way it shows up, we've all had the situation. You're working on something, maybe you've been working all day. There's a few more things you got to get done, and you're working into the evening. And then pretty soon you're just exhausted. And it's like, man, I beat my head against the wall. I can't get this done. I'll just fix it in the morning. So you spent maybe 2 or 3 hours trying to get it done. You go to bed and you actually sleep because you're exhausted. You wake up the next morning, come down to your office, jump on it, and lo and behold, you knock it out in 30 minutes. The thing you struggle with for 3 hours because you were tired, worn out, didn't have your faculties, didn't have your peak creativity, was knocked out in 30 minutes when you had all those things available. So what it teaches you is that rest is very, very impactful for productivity. But we don't see that in this country that way. What we see is, look, if we can eliminate downtime, then we can increase productivity. And that's great for a production line, for a mechanical, but for a human, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. We actually need that downtime to get in touch with our creativity, let our body rest and rejuvenate so that we can hit it hard and be really effective in those hours that we're trying to hit it hard, instead of just stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch, because something at some point it's going to have to give.
All right. Let's talk about that personality of the entrepreneur, business owner, and how it leads them into that trap, if you will.
Yeah.
So most business owners are high achievers. They're probably well organized. Some are, some aren't.
Yeah.
They take responsibility.
Yeah.
And then they take on too much responsibility where they are at the center of the business's universe. And then they're not giving other people, and I see some of this in myself. So
Sure. We all
they
do.
don't give other people, or I'll just start saying we don't give other people the space to come in and contribute.
Yeah.
And one of the things I bet happens when owners back off a little bit is it creates some space so that other people can come in and contribute. Now, it may take a little bit of time, a little bit of encouragement, and a little bit of stepping back, but I bet that gives some space for other people who would ordinarily and would like to contribute to be able to contribute. Am I on target there?
Yeah. So let me take that from the psychology perspective, okay, and I've studied personalities a lot. And so, a base personality for business owners, not all, but a lot, is that they are responsible workaholics. Okay. And so if you look at that on a continuum, being responsible on one end is fantastic. Man, who wouldn't want to be around somebody that's responsible, that's reliable, can get things done? Perfect. In fact, it's a necessity if you're going to have any shot at being a success in your business. But the workaholic part, the overdoing of work, that's problematic. In fact, any strength that we have, when we overdo it, becomes a weakness. It begins to work against us. And so that's what you see in this situation, because part of the baseline of that personality are some driver behaviors. We won't get into the weeds on that, but there's some driver behaviors. One of them is to be strong, be perfect. And so what you see is people taking control that are responsible, that have learned in life, hey, if I take responsibility for things, I get things done, I'm going to be okay. However they define that. People will love me, I'll make money, I'll feel secure, I'll get accolades, I'll have status, whatever it is that people define as important, they get. So when you overdo that, what they're really doing is they're trying to satisfy that emotional yearning, all right, for them to be okay, however they define that. And so what happens is that they then tell themselves, well, nobody's going to do the job like I will. Nobody cares like I do. Nobody's bought in like I am. All right. And the reality of it is that may be true. But what is also true is success doesn't require a legion of business owners. What it requires is a business owner leader with a legion of good team members. And a lot of team members that are excellent have no desire to be business owners. So if we got a bunch of chiefs running around, it's not going to work. So this mindset that people have is, I need everybody to be bought in like me. If you really had it, it really doesn't work optimally because there's going to be too much headbutting.
Mm-hmm.
So what you need is the ability to say, look, I need to delegate, but I need to satisfy that control factor that I have. And that's what really is at the core of that, Mark, is a lot of people don't want to delegate because they don't think that people will do the job as well as them. And that will lead to things falling through the cracks. And things fall through the cracks, it's going to blow my business up. That's a fear-based thinking. That's not really true because there's always time to recover. So it's a good way to, again, make sure emotionally you're getting what you need to be safe and okay. But it's the exact opposite of what your business needs to take off. And so that's a great example of what I was talking about before, is we do the things that are strengths for ours, and we work hard and harder and harder and harder, but the things that we know how to do aren't working out for us. So we do more of them. And that's where the blind spots come in. Mm-hmm. Right? I have to do it versus I got to get somebody to help me, because what we really don't know is, how can I do that? How can I hand it off without losing control? And that's one of the big parts of the program that I coach people on is, look, you have to get levers in your business. We lever money, we lever technology, we lever people. But we got to take it to the nth degree if we're going to really have success, because the reality of it is that your business has to be bigger than you if it's going to really support you in the way that you need it to. And the only way that can happen is in implementing levers in your business.
And then plus, if you're trying to do too much, you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to read an email accurately. You're going to jump to conclusions. You're going to be in a pissy mood, dealing with the very people, employees and clients that you want to please and want to be supportive of. So yeah, it just doesn't work.
You're working against yourself and you don't even realize it. That's what I mean by blind spots. But then hey man, this is not working. So inherently I got to do more. And if you really peel that onion, what you're saying is I got to do more of what's not working for me.
Right. It's sort of like the educational system. Those school districts that go to year-round school schedules, let's find something. I may get myself in trouble, but let's have a technique that doesn't work, and let's do more of it, and then it will work. Let me mention one very simple tool that I use, and that is a 30-minute nap every day around 2 o'clock. When my energy starts to wane, I lay down. I usually set a timer for 30 minutes, and I can go all the way out, and then gradually start coming back. And that gets me through the rest of the day and my exercise in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, you know, I can't talk about your nap, but what I can talk about is the concept of rest. And that's what I was alluding to earlier, and the fact that, you know, in this country, you know, we're a nation of strivers for the most part, right? Especially in the business owner community. And so we're working and working and working and working. And what often has happened, again, this is programming from when we were younger. As I was saying before, the things that work for us to survive from a child to an adult can often be the things that hold us back in our business. And so what we learned is that, you know, work is a good thing. Okay. Anytime I'm not working, then a lot of people, a lot of business owners in their family of origin, then that was considered taboo. It was, you're either lazy, right? Get up and get something done.
Slacker.
Right? Slacker, all these negative things. And like, hey man, I don't want to be known as a slacker. I don't want to be known as lazy. And so again, we've got this programming that's driving us. And so what we do is we begin to classify, and a lot of times outside of our awareness, but we begin to classify anything that's not work as BS or laziness, all right? Slacker. And so, hey, I don't want to be that, so I'm not going to do that. And so what we tell ourselves is that constant work is the path to the Holy Grail. And the reality of it is that's absolutely not so. There's a book out there called Rest. I don't know if you've heard about it. The long and short of the story is that we have to work in leisure time so that we can maximize our God-given capabilities, right, to the max. If we don't do that, then we're basically operating this machine completely off manual. And so it's really interesting.
Let's get practical here for a minute. Okay. And not that we're not being, but how does a business owner decide what to start passing off to somebody else?
Yeah.
Where do you start, and how far do you go in order to still maintain the owner's still responsible, ultimately responsible? So to maintain quality, where do you start?
Well, you know, that particular launch point is going to be different for everybody. So what I'll do is answer this in general to try to be helpful for everybody. And the reality of it is, in business, there are certain things that the business owner is really good at, right? And there's certain things, even though they believe they're great at, they're probably lousy by comparison. All right. Someone else can do it better, faster, you know, more effective, more efficient, etc. So what you have to do is you have to say, okay, what are the core drivers of my business as a business owner that I'm really good at? Like, there's no question. Like, people come to me, I always get results with this. Like, this is easy for me to do, right? Those are the areas where you have to drill into and go, okay, if I'm maximizing my time in these 1 or 2 or 3 areas, then what kind of result, turnaround, payback do I get for that within my business? And so even within those major areas, there's probably drill downs within those that, man, you're excellent at certain things. And so what that gets you to is you doing the things that only you can do within your business. And everything else, then you almost have to look at, Mark, from my perspective, as disdain and growth robbing, keeping you from advancing. Because if you get bogged down, buried with all these side things, you can't get to the important things. And now that gets you back to an old rule, Pareto's rule, the 80-20 rule, that 20% of the things within your business really drive 80% of the results. But what I see is most business owners try to handle 80% of the thing and end up only getting 20% of the results that they otherwise could. And it's just normal, right? If you got yourself full up and you're focused on all these peripheral things that make you feel good at the end of the day because you can check off your list. Hey, man, look at my list, right? That's busyness. And busyness a lot of times doesn't equal business. In fact, hardly ever. So we got to get to the markers that go, okay, what are the drivers of business? And at the end of the day, can I see how I've elevated my business? I've got more opportunities. I've created strategic partnerships. I've landed more customers. I've opened more doors. I position myself for, other markets, whatever that is what most business or the business owners should be spending most of their time doing. It's not
I think a lot of it is, and I've seen this time and time again with clients where they grow their business and there is a certain point where they can't afford to hire almost anybody else. They've got to do that. They've got to do most of it. But then they get some cash flow and they can afford it, but there's fear there, not only control, but also financial concerns.
Yes.
Can I spin off this revenue to pay for this?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about valuing your time, the owner valuing their time. And part of this is about what is the cost of X service and Y service. So if it's below a certain cost, then it's not cost effective for the owner to be spending their time doing it.
Yeah, I think that it's a good point, and you got to have some kind of a barometer, right? And so to me, it makes a lot of sense to kind of figure out what your hourly rate is. And so, if you go, look, I'm earning $150,000 out of my business per year. Divide that by 2,080, and now you've got this number. I don't know, $125 or something like that, right? And so that's a good way to evaluate. Hey, is me, filling out this fax that came in from somebody, is that $125 an hour work, or is me following up with this potential strategic partner that I met at a networking event that could open up 2 or 3 markets for me? Is that $125 an hour work or more? And so a lot of people don't think in those distinctions. They just think on the list, got to go through the list, get the things done, knocked off the list. And so the real picture there is a couple steps previous to that. And that is, what is it that you're wanting to achieve with your business? What type of impact are you wanting to make? And what is it that you get out of that deal of taking on all the risk and the headaches and the responsibility for growing? We got to connect to that, because if we connect to that, then we have a real clear filter to evaluate things as they come at you. If you don't, then all roads seem like they'll take you home. And what happens is you get halfway down the road, it's like, that's not what I thought it was. And if you had just taken a step back and go, hey, is this even really aligned with what I'm trying to achieve? you could have sidestepped all that distraction. But because we don't do that and we get a little nervous about cash flow, then we start going, okay, I got to do anything and everything. And look, there's some realities. When you hire someone, you got to be able to pay them. I mean, you don't want to hire them today and have to fire them a month from now because you're just, you're rolling the dice and making too big of bets. So there is a certain responsibility that comes along with hiring someone. But the way that I think you have to look at that is to say, okay, based on where you are in your model, what do you need? And so if you're that 1 or 2 person operation and you're thinking about bringing on a third, then you've already gone through the initial, oh my gosh, I'm hiring somebody, I'm going to be responsible for this. And now I get that, that knot in my gut or a stress in my back or wherever we feel it in our body. And so it's almost a guessing thing. Can it continue? But if you look at it and say, look, at this point in my business, what I've done, and we're talking about elevated revenues here if you're talking about hiring someone, right? So what you've done in that situation is you have proven that your sales model is viable in the business, that people will buy what you offer and will pay what you're asking for. And so now you got to do a math equation. If I could double my production, or maybe even 2.5 the production, because if we hire someone that's focused, they should be able to produce more than what you're doing because you're running a whole company and selling. So you say, okay, if I can do that, then whatever my investment is into them, then that makes a lot of sense. If you basically go and hire a bunch of people for the revenues there, what you do is now you're getting top heavy, okay? And you're hoping that everything works out. And now that's a real gamble. It turns out for some, but for most business owners, they're not riverboat gamblers. They take calculated risks. So if your revenues are there, then you start going, okay, who do I need? Well, I need a salesperson. Okay, great. The salesperson came in and they did well. What's my next hire? Well, gosh, I need to have somebody out there marketing so we can get even more sales opportunities. All right. How much more do I need to sell to be able to pay for that marketing person? Okay, great. Now I've got new goals for my salespeople, myself. As long as I'm hitting that, then I can keep ratcheting up the business. And so that's the way you think about it. Then next, okay, I got my marketing in place. I'm starting to build some systems and starting to consistently bring in new leads. I got my sales team. I got a sales process there. They're converting a high number of those. All right, now I got to go to my delivery, my operations. All right, I need somebody in there that can help me consistently deliver our results at the level that I want so that we can maintain our brand loyalty to our people and our promise to our customers, right? You just kind of stair step it up. If you don't do it that way, it becomes very nerve-wracking because it's like, I'm kind of taking a shot in the dark and I hope it works out. And you don't really understand what needs to work out so that you can focus on making that work out. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go back to nuts and bolts again.
Okay.
I know everybody's different, every client's different, every business is different, but there's some similarities. And also, I think one of the misjudgments that business owners make is we think that we're so damn unique. And the reality is there's a lot of, and I find that in marketing all the time. Oh, well, I could see how you could market to this group, but not to this subgroup of that group. Yeah. Whereas the reality is, yes, B2B is different from B2C marketing, but there are a lot of similarities and there are a lot of things to draw on.
Yeah.
So what are the top 3 tasks that you find that most business owners could let go of, hire somebody else to do, outsource it? What are the top 3 tasks that are the most likely to be able to be offloaded not only without harming the business, but to really help the business?
Yeah, it's a great question because, the skills and the expertise of businesses are so varied, right? But I'll just tell you where I see normal sticking points, and that hopefully that'll be a decent answer. A lot of times the selling is a component there. And what I find is that every now and again you can find an owner that really sells well, can really sell well, but most of them are just passionate, and so they do things without really knowing how they do it. They transfer their passion, and people get mostly bought in. And so what they could do is to help their business is really share that kind of standard for how they see their product. But what they do instead is, hey, I'm going to interview some people, and I'm going to hire a couple people because they got the gift of gab, and I think they're going to be excellent salespeople. And so they're trying to do the right thing, but they're kind of hiring the wrong person, the wrong personality type. Because the reality of it is most people don't like to be sold to, and they don't like to feel like they're engaged with a salesperson. They love a professional salesperson. They have no time for a cheesy salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of time that gift of gab person unfortunately falls into that cheesy category. And the owner thinks that, hey, this is my person, and the public's like, get away from me. And so that's one area where I see kind of sales falling through when business owners hand stuff off, because they don't have the foundational part there, and they don't really understand what their business represents to the public, and then align their hiring to that. So that's one. Another is, it's not really it's not a handoff, it's what they don't do. And that is really pay attention and have financial statements. And unfortunately, a lot of business owners really kind of operate their business by their bank account. Hey, I got money in the bank account, everything's great, right? And that doesn't give us any ability to understand what we're doing well and what we're failing at. And that's a real risk equation there, because you don't know how to repeat your successes or avoid your failures. Mm-hmm. It just comes down to winging it. Yeah. I don't know I'm really answering specifically what you asked me. I'm just kind of sharing what I've seen there. Sure. Because again, it's so varied. The other big thing that I see that business owners are falling down on a little bit is really, slowing down so they can speed up. And what I mean by that is they've got their firefighter hat on, and they'll put fires out like nobody's business. But the problem is they put them out to a smolder. And so they flare back up again. And so where they could really help themselves is, instead of fixing it for the moment, is fix it for consistency or fix it for repeatability. And the challenge there is slowing down. But that goes in with the style thing I was talking about earlier, where they tell themselves, I can't slow down. But yet they keep all these smoldering fires. And so they block themselves in to always being busy and never getting to the thing that is really, really important to grow their business, take their things to the next level. Mm-hmm. One other thing that's saying, this is going to sound self-serving, and it's not, but it's more of a public service announcement, and that is business owners getting help. And the reality of it is again, back to a style thing, they're very responsible. They've always been self-reliant, self-sufficient, and it's a real hard thing for business owners, for most of them, to go, okay, hey, I need a little help here. I need a hand here. Because somewhere inside of them is like, if I don't do it all myself, then somehow it means less, which is completely fabricated. But it leads to a lot of business owners having a really, really high struggle rate that really they don't need to. And so, getting help, it doesn't have to be paying a coach like me. It could be someone that you trust to be your accountability partner. It could be someone that's been in business for a while that you buy their lunch and pick their brain. But a lot of times business owners won't do that because I'm too busy to do that stuff. And then somewhere inside, it's like, if I ask for help, then I'm kind of running the white flag up the pole somehow. And doesn't mean as much unless I do it all on my own. And you can. The problem is that road is a hell of a lot longer. All right. Figuring it out, trial and error, than it is getting help and getting to results and getting to success faster. And I see that a lot.
And it could be a therapist that they need.
A lot of time it is, because there is pressure from the business, there's pressure from, the personal, there's pressure from the relationships, pressure from the family, societal pressure. I mean, there's a lot of pressure going, tax and government pressure. I mean, there's a lot of crap that you got to deal with as a business owner. And you mix all that in, and and the reality for most business owners is, as I said, they're really good at what they know how to do, but they really are never been trained on how to run and create a business. So you're really flying an airplane and building it at the same time. And so if you just think about that, of course, there's people can help you can make it faster that know how to build an airplane, right? I mean, speaking of airplane now, we don't go to the airport and go, hey, slide over there, Captain. I'm going to pull this. I've seen how people do this. I think I can fly us there. We would never think of that. But we get right in the cockpit of our business and go, no, I got it. Where are we going? I'm not sure, but I know we're going to get there, right? It's just right. This is, if you stop and think about these things, it doesn't make sense. And the reason it doesn't make sense is because it's not logical, it's emotional. And when we can understand that in ourselves, then we can start stepping out of those blind spots that really hold us back.
Give owners some techniques for building trust in their employees to empower them to step up. Give us some coaching on that.
So the first step is hiring for fit within your organization. Again, I've seen either they're afraid, and so they're just like, it's new experience for them. So like, this person seems okay, I'll go with them, right? Or it's an established business, like, oh man, they dropped, I need somebody in this spot right now, man, because we got all kind of stuff that's got to get done. And so for either reason, you end up in the same place, which is you can often hire people that are not a fit for you within your organization, meaning they don't really see the world through the same glasses, through the same filters that you do. Therefore, they have different morals, they have different drives, they have different things that are important to them. And a lot of times what you can do is spend a lot of time butting heads, trying to get somebody to read off your sheet of music, rather than just kind of getting down the path together. And so that first step is really trying to hire for fit, which means you got to understand what your culture is and what you're trying to fit people to, and what your allure is. Why in the world would somebody come and work for you, right? Not just because you're paying $20 an hour and somebody else is paying 18. It's got to be more than that. People want to be a part of something bigger than themselves and really contribute to change. So that's the first thing. So let's say that you do have somebody that you actually trust and they are bought into what you're trying to build as an organization. Well, the next thing is to stair step this thing up. And you can't go kind of from 0 to 60, because honestly, it'll stress you out. You'll have an anxiety attack and all that, and you'll micromanage and probably end up pissing people off that are good, and they'll want to leave because you're constantly over their shoulder. So what you do is you break this thing down into baby steps, and you start giving them sole responsibility for small things and let them do it. And two things have to happen there. Number one is you have to be focused on outcomes rather than actions. A lot of business owners get stuck on, hey, they're not doing it the way I would do it. The reality is that most people aren't. You're a business owner, other people aren't. They look at the world differently than you do. So you're going to do things differently. Just accept it and move on. All right. So what you really got to look for is outcomes. Are they delivering the result, the outcome, the impact that I'm looking for? Don't get hung up on, hey man, they walk 2 steps to the left and I always walk 2 steps to the right. They're never going to make it that way. So that's number one. Number two is give them these small things that if they completely mess them up, I mean, they tank them and they just blow it out of the water, it's horrible, that is really not that impactful. So what happens is you can take, the trust risk on things that are really minimally impactful to your business. And then you go, hey, they actually did a good job here. I told them to do X, Y, and Z, and they did X, Y, and Z. And again, they didn't do it exactly like I would, but I got my result. I'm happy. Let me take the next step. Let me give them a little more. And so what you're doing is you're really training the employee to take responsibility and that you trust them. And you're training yourself to let go of some of the rope, that you're going to be okay.
Talk about the power of praise in this situation.
uh, extremely powerful, extremely powerful. But it has to be authentic, Mark. And people can smell a rat real quick when you're just like placating them. And what business owners have to do is they have to get to the point of understanding what the big game plan is so they can appreciate the players in their plan. And so if you truly have a bigger picture for your organization and you got somebody helping you day in and day out do their piece of the puzzle to the big picture, man, you if you don't have natural gratitude for that, you probably need to get yourself checked, right? So if you understand that big picture and how they're helping you, these are levers. I talked about that earlier in the conversation. This is a lever. And so really, truly appreciating the dedication and the effort and the commitment that someone is putting out for your business to help you elevate so you can make your place in the world, so you can make the impact in the community, so you can help your customers, so you can do all, you can help your employees. I mean, that's a big deal. So that should come with some natural praise that's authentic. But if you don't have that, people are going to smell it out and go, you know what? You're full of it. And as soon as I get a shot to go get another $1 an hour somewhere over here, I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I like to catch people doing things right.
Yeah. That's my phrase. Did I share that with you?
No.
Yeah. That's my phrase. That's what I coach people on as business owners is I got a whole structure around that. But basically, when we have our group meetings, we identify or we call people out that have done really well. And I call that caught being good. And then we tell the story of how they were going above and beyond, or they were, sticking in a really tough situation, or just doing something that helped the business that we really want to be held up on high and have all of our other employees emulate that. Powerful.
And I think it's particularly valuable when you do it in front of the client,
Okay.
like in an email,
Yeah.
that you're talking to an employee and a client, and you're saying, thanks for doing that, and the client's hearing that, thank you, and I think it can help feed that positivity of the client towards the worker as well.
I'm sure you've heard that, the old adage, the way the boss treats the employees is the way the employees are going to treat the customers.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. And, your people are your interface with your customers. I know we're in the digital world. A lot of people do stuff by computer, but they're still interacting with the world. Right. And what do you want those people to do? And obviously you can't control all behavior, but you can certainly incentivize and you can certainly lead by example. And when I see business owners do that, man, their teams they're behind them, and they'll run through a wall for them, and they'll support them during the downtimes. But the boss is straight with them, the owner is straight with them, so they feel like they're a part of something versus I'm a hired hand, just getting some money for time, and as soon as I can get the hell out of here today, I will. And if I can cut corners, I'm all about it. And now you get into paying dollars in salary that is not very productive for your organization.
This catching people doing things right, it feels so good that I focus on it with my vendors.
Yeah.
In the restaurant with a waiter.
Yeah.
And I'll make a point, if I get some really good service, let's say from a service vendor,
Yeah.
then I will ask them for their supervisor and their supervisor's email address. And I'll write an email, takes 10 minutes, and I'll copy that vendor, my contact.
Yep.
And boy, it's so productive, because if you need that person to go to bat for you, they're going to remember you.
Absolutely.
And also, the supervisors are so used to hearing negative shit all the time.
Yep.
Complaint. When they hear something positive, it pumps them up too, and pumps them up about their employee. So absolutely. I think it's really important.
Well, it is, Mark, and I think, just from a perspective standpoint, I think there's far too many people, or far too few people looking for positivity, and far too many looking for the first way they can catch somebody and get after them. And I just think I think that's a sad thing, because none of us are perfect. The last dude that was perfect, we know what happened to him. They got him up on the cross, right? So it's like everybody wants leadway for themselves, but hold everybody to the rule outside of themselves. And I just think if we all gave each other a little bit of room, it'd be a lot better for everybody. And
Let me give you, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And so I think that conveys in the business, as I said, as business owners who treat their employees well often have employees that treat their customers well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me give you a memorable example. I was in Subway, and normally people are slinging stuff onto the sandwiches, and this one young 20-something was very meticulous. He was still brisk, but he was very meticulous. He put every piece of onion, bell pepper, everything in its place. And he was still getting things done, but he was really paying attention.
Hey, it's priceless.
And at the end, and some of them are horrible, but at that particular place.
Yeah.
And at the end, I said, I really appreciate the way that you crafted that sandwich.
Yeah.
And he puffed up.
Yeah.
And he says, I am a sandwich artist.
There you go. There you go.
And he could not have been more proud. And he was a sandwich artist.
Absolutely.
So now he wasn't that impressed with my comment.
Yeah.
It wasn't that much of a compliment, but because he felt such internal pride over what he was doing.
Exactly.
But I think people do appreciate it. And the opposite, I'll tell you the opposite story. I said at Subway, I'd like to have everything but no peppers and no onions. And the response was, well, which type of peppers do you not want? I want no peppers and no onions. So they run the gamut.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's really important just putting that out in the world, and helping people feel better, because there are a lot of people that don't. And one other habit of mine is to look at that, especially the clerk in the grocery store line, the cashier, and not just, hey, how you doing, but really look at them and ask with intent, how are you? And engage just a little bit with them.
Yeah. It's amazing when you slow down a little bit what you find. There's a lot of gems in people, right? I mean, people are gems, right? You find that they do these unbelievable things, and you look at it and you're like, I would have no idea that you would have that skill, that capability, that talent, that insight, right? But you don't find that out if you're just zooming by. And so it's hard, because our world has devolved down to work, work, work. But the real life, I think, is being able to not modernize, but take everything in moderation, moderate what you're doing, right? And because there's a balance, there's all sorts of things here. And
I'd like to take an opportunity, and I certainly wasn't planning it, but the timing is just irresistible.
Okay.
So OutMarket.Pro, our focus is using technology and low-cost labor to solve marketing challenges.
Yep.
And we've added some small business services, bookkeeping, remote IT, along the way. And we're now expanding. And I'd like to get your honest, true opinion about it.
Yeah.
We've had a virtual assistant service for a long time. And actually, this was on the first day of a vacation I had. So it proves your point about the creativity that comes when you're not bound to the day-to-day work.
Yep.
And this hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was the term virtual office manager. So we are now, fast forward, we are now offering not just an assistant to come and help, but a virtual office manager to take care of that. I think it's about 50% of all the work that I do that's not related, it's tangential to the main work involved. Bookkeeping, renewals of commercial office, commercial insurance, URL renewals, website updates, all those bookkeeping.
Waiting online to get help from one of your software programs. I mean, all these things are not online, but on the phone, trying to get through non-existent customer service, right?
And not just providing an assistant to help me do those things, but to have an virtual office manager to take responsibility, to diary those. Okay, I need to check on this renewal. So we're doing that, and my team, my outsourced team, has a core competency in commercial insurance, where they can handle all of the back office work for a commercial insurance agency. So we're moving into that. I'm just capitalizing on the skills that they already have and do outside of their work with me to handle those. But I would think that many entrepreneurs could really benefit from, if they can do it, to offload some of that stuff, and not only the task, but the secondary responsibility. Ultimately, we're still responsible. What are your thoughts?
I think that the idea of a virtual whatever makes some sense for a business owner that's growing, but maybe is not quite comfortable with taking on the overhead of a salary, right? Because what that is a nice half step into. And so not only can they kind of get a feel for what it's like to work with someone, but they can start really laying out what is the work that I need this person to do, so that when I've got my dollars, going out around the clock, every minute, every hour, I'm getting the most productivity out of this person I can, because I've thought through what I really need them to do in relationship to where I'm going. So I love the idea of a virtual assistant. I recommend it to, my business owners if they're in that state. It makes complete sense. But again, it's also kind of proving ground, if you will, or learning ground on how to begin to let go. So I think it's great. Are we getting close to your time here? I got.
We are. Tell our audience how we can reach you. Okay,
so the easiest way to reach me is my website. Well, actually my phone number, so I'll give you both. Website is www.springboardcoaching.com, springboardcoaching.com. And then my office number is and there's a contact form on my website, so you can send that in and contact me that way. Or if you want to talk to me, 502-589-3253. Again, 502-589-3253 is my office number.
Go ahead and give email too.
And then email is, the email is help@springboardcoaching.com, help@springboardcoaching.com. Any of those three ways can get to me. And then if you have, you have something going on in your business, you want to chat about, my first process or first step in my process is have this conversation. What's going on? What are you trying to achieve? And go from there. And, I will tell you that not everybody I talk to I end up working with, because, some things they're trying to achieve I don't have experience in, and some things they're trying to achieve in the time frame are not realistic. But if there's, at least an early match, then we explore and see, what it might look like and what outcomes we would work together to achieve and go down that path. So again, if you have some things going on in the business that you haven't been able to get through, or you want a second set of eyes, maybe a little guidance, or somebody that's owned 4 businesses and been coaching for over 10 years, I'd be glad to talk to you and see if there's something I can help you with.
Great. Don Odom, thank you so much for being involved with the podcast.
Yep.
I always enjoy talking to you
Same
and
here.
hearing what you're thinking and what you're working through and what you're helping your clients do. So thanks so much. Everybody, thank you for joining in. Tune in. Be sure to like the podcast if you did,
Yep.
and subscribe to get more and hit that notification bell. And we'll see you next time on the OutMarket.Pro podcast.
All right.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.